February 17, 1944, 0215 hours. New Georgia Island, Solomon Islands. The tropical night pressed down like black velvet. No moon, no stars, just suffocating darkness and the distant sound of jungle insects. Corporal Daniel Eugene Fisher lay motionless in his fighting hole, controlling his breathing, listening to the darkness with the intensity of a man who'd grown up in Pennsylvania coal mines, where light meant life and darkness meant death. 40 yards to his front, positioned at precise intervals across the defensive perimeter, 11 tiny orange glows flickered weakly in the blackness. To any observer, they appeared to be careless American sentries smoking cigarettes after dark, a fatal violation of light discipline that Japanese infiltrators were trained to exploit. But these weren't cigarettes. They were painted watch components coated with stolen radium-based luminescent paint mounted on improvised mechanical timers that created realistic pulsing patterns, dim, then bright, then dim again, perfectly mimicking the draw and exhale cycle of nervous soldiers seeking comfort in tobacco. Through darkness so complete he couldn't see his own hand, Fisher waited. His Springfield rifle rested against his shoulder, pre-aimed at a specific point he'd memorized during daylight. The phantom embers did their work, calling to Japanese scouts like sirens, promising easy kills and intelligence about American defensive positions. At 0227 hours, Fisher heard it, the almost imperceptible sound of fabric brushing vegetation 70 yards out. Someone was approaching the leftmost ember. His breathing slowed further. His finger found the trigger. The mathematics of death in total darkness were about to be demonstrated with surgical precision. The Pacific Theater's nocturnal battlefield belonged to the Japanese in early 1944. Their soldiers, trained in aggressive night infiltration tactics, moved through darkness with confidence that terrified American forces. Marine defensive positions across the Solomon Islands suffered routine night attacks that killed sentries, destroyed equipment, and shattered morale. The psychological impact exceeded the casualty count. Exhausted Marines couldn't sleep, fired at shadows, and sometimes shot their own men during panicked responses to sounds in the darkness. Daniel Fisher understood darkness differently than most Americans. Born in 1922 in Centralia, Pennsylvania, he'd started working in anthracite coal mines at age 14, following his father into shafts where sunlight never reached. Underground work taught crucial lessons about light, shadow, and human vision. He learned that the human eye adapts to darkness over 30 minutes, that peripheral vision detects movement better than direct focus, and that tiny light sources in complete blackness draw attention with hypnotic intensity. Miners who lit cigarettes in methane-rich tunnels died. Those who respected the darkness survived. After Pearl Harbor, Fisher enlisted immediately. Marine boot camp at Parris Island revealed his unusual night vision capability. During nighttime training exercises, instructors noticed he moved through darkness with eerie confidence, while other recruits stumbled and collided. His company commander, Captain Robert Harrison, pulled him aside after a particularly impressive night navigation exercise. "Fisher, you move in the dark like you own it. How?" Fisher's response was simple. "Sir, darkness isn't your enemy if you understand it. Most people fear what they can't see. I learned to trust what I can hear and remember what I saw before the lights went out." By January 1944, Fisher deployed to New Georgia Island with the 5th Marine Division. The Japanese presence on New Georgia remained formidable despite earlier Allied victories. Enemy forces controlled significant interior territory and conducted aggressive patrolling, especially after dark. Marine casualties from night attacks averaged 4 to 7 men per night across the division's sector, a hemorrhage of experienced infantry that commanders couldn't sustain. On February 4th, Fisher's squad participated in a night patrol that went catastrophically wrong. Ordered to probe Japanese positions near the Munda Point perimeter, the 12-man patrol moved cautiously through jungle darkness. At approximately 23:30 hours, they walked into a perfectly executed Japanese ambush. Machine gun fire and grenades erupted from 3 sides. The patrol leader, Sergeant William Kowalski, died instantly. 8 other Marines fell within seconds. Fisher and 2 others survived only by throwing themselves into a stream bed and remaining motionless for 6 hours while Japanese soldiers searched for survivors above them. Dawn revealed the horror. 9 Marines dead, including Fisher's closest friend, Corporal Jimmy Reeves from Philadelphia. Japanese forces had stripped the bodies of weapons, documents, and identification. Worst of all, evidence suggested the enemy had been waiting specifically for the patrol. Someone or something had given away their approach. The patrol had maintained strict light discipline, made minimal noise, yet still walked directly into prepared positions. Fisher spent February 5th through 7th in a state of controlled rage and analytical obsession. He studied after-action reports from similar incidents across the division. A pattern emerged. Japanese ambushes consistently occurred when American forces moved at night, despite rigorous light discipline training. How were enemy soldiers detecting patrols in complete darkness? The answer came during a February 8th briefing when an intelligence officer mentioned captured Japanese training documents. The enemy taught their soldiers to watch for specific American behavioral patterns. One document specifically instructed night infiltrators to look for cigarette glows, watch reflections, lens glare from binoculars, and even the phosphorescent glow of standard-issue wristwatches, whose radium-painted dials could be visible at surprising distances in total darkness. That final detail sparked Fisher's imagination. Wristwatch dials glowed because of radium-based paint that required no external light source. The luminescence lasted for years. If Japanese soldiers were trained to look for these tiny light sources, what would happen if American forces deliberately created false ones in controlled positions? Fisher's initial concept was crude but promising. If he could create fake light sources that resembled careless American sentries smoking cigarettes, Japanese infiltrators might approach these positions expecting easy kills. American defenders, knowing the lights were decoys, could wait in concealment and ambush the ambushers. The tactic reversed the night warfare advantage, turning Japanese aggression into vulnerability. The technical challenge was creating realistic cigarette ember simulations. Real cigarettes glow irregularly, bright when drawn, dimmer between puffs, occasionally sparking. Static light sources wouldn't fool experienced enemy scouts. Fisher needed animated light that mimicked human behavior patterns. The solution came from repurposing materials nobody else considered weapons. Working with Private Leonard Nash, a former watchmaker from Boston, Fisher began collecting broken wristwatches from throughout the company. Many Marines had damaged watches after jungle combat. The radium paint on watch hands and dial markers remained luminescent even when the timepiece no longer functioned. Using razor blades and incredible patience, Fisher and Nash scraped radium paint from watch components, accumulating enough luminescent material to coat small pieces of metal and cardboard. This created a glowing substance they could position and adjust. But static glows wouldn't work. They needed movement and variation. Nash provided the breakthrough. He salvaged springs and gears from destroyed alarm clocks, creating crude mechanical timers that could rotate painted surfaces at variable speeds. When properly adjusted, these devices created pulsing light patterns that closely resembled cigarette embers being smoked. The glow intensified briefly, then dimmed, then intensified again, exactly mimicking the draw-exhale-draw cycle of nervous smoking. February 9th brought their first test. With Captain Harrison's skeptical approval, Fisher positioned 3 improvised Ember devices across his platoon's defensive sector. Each device sat 40 to 60 yards forward of actual Marine positions, placed to draw attention away from real defensive positions. Fisher and 2 other Marines positioned themselves in carefully camouflaged fighting holes with clear fields of fire toward the decoy lights. At 0245 hours, Japanese infiltrators approached. Through complete darkness, Fisher heard movement, fabric against vegetation, equipment shifting slightly, controlled breathing. The enemy soldiers were moving toward the leftmost Ember device, exactly as predicted. They assumed careless American sentries were revealing their positions through light discipline violations. Fisher's Springfield rifle was pre-aimed at a memorized point 3 feet right of the glow device. Japanese doctrine taught soldiers to approach targets from oblique angles, never directly. He'd studied captured training manuals and knew exactly where an enemy scout would position himself to observe and kill the supposed sentry. At 0251, Fisher fired. The muzzle flash illuminated his target for a split second. A Japanese soldier crouched exactly where predicted, rifle raised, preparing to shoot the phantom smoker. Fisher's .30-06 round struck center mass. The enemy soldier fell without a sound. 40 yards distant, another Marine fired at a second target approaching the center Ember device. Another confirmed kill. Japanese forces, suddenly aware they'd walked into a trap, withdrew rapidly. Scattered rifle fire pursued them, but darkness provided cover. Morning revealed 2 dead Japanese soldiers, both elite scouts from the 6th Division's Reconnaissance Company. Documents recovered from one body included detailed notes about American defensive positions and patrol schedules. These weren't random infiltrators. They were intelligence gatherers whose elimination degraded enemy operational planning. Captain Harrison's assessment was immediate. "Fisher, that worked better than I expected. How many of these light devices can you make, and how fast?" Fisher calculated resources. "Sir, if I can get 20 more broken watches and clock parts, I can outfit the entire battalion perimeter within 3 days. Every sector gets decoy embers. Japanese infiltrators will have to choose: ignore all glowing lights and operate blind, or investigate and walk into ambushes." The approval came from Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Martinez, who'd been searching desperately for solutions to night infiltration losses. "Corporal Fisher, you have 48 hours and unlimited access to any materials you need. I want this technique operational across every defensive position we control." February 10th through 12th witnessed frantic preparation. Fisher organized a production line, training Marines in Ember device construction. The technique spread rapidly because it required minimal resources. Broken watches were abundant, scrap metal was everywhere, and mechanical skills existed throughout the division. By February 12th, the 5th Marine Division's defensive perimeter featured 147 active Ember devices positioned at carefully calculated intervals. But Fisher refined the technique beyond simple decoys. He created variations that exploited different aspects of Japanese psychology and training. Some embers pulsed rapidly, suggesting nervous, inexperienced sentries. Others glowed steadily, implying bored veterans ignoring regulations. A few devices created irregular patterns suggesting soldiers in conversation, occasionally illuminating each other with lighter flicks. The positioning was equally sophisticated. Fisher placed some embers in obviously poor defensive locations, exposed positions without cover that represented tactical mistakes. Japanese infiltrators, assuming American incompetence, would prioritize these targets. Other embers sat near real defensive positions, but offset just enough that attackers approaching the light would walk directly into prepared kill zones. The psychological dimension was crucial. Fisher understood that Japanese soldiers, like all humans, were pattern recognition machines. Once they believed American forces were carelessly smoking at night, they'd start looking for this vulnerability everywhere. The Ember devices weaponized this expectation, turning enemy training into a fatal weakness. February 13th began the operational phase. As darkness fell, 147 Ember devices activated across the defensive perimeter. To Japanese observers in distant positions, the American lines suddenly appeared riddled with light discipline violations. Through their binoculars,
Enemy commanders saw dozens of glowing points suggesting widespread carelessness and poor unit discipline. What followed exceeded all predictions. Japanese forces, believing they'd identified catastrophic American security failures, launched coordinated infiltration operations across the entire sector. Intelligence reports suggested enemy commanders anticipated a devastating night attack that would shatter Marine defenses and potentially force a tactical withdrawal. Instead, they walked into systematically prepared ambushes. Fisher personally accounted for 7 confirmed kills that first night, but his technique enabled over 40 Marine riflemen to achieve kills as Japanese soldiers approached Ember devices. The pattern was consistent. Enemy scouts moved confidently toward glowing lights, positioned themselves to attack supposed sentries, then died as actual Marines fired from concealment. The most significant kill occurred at 0315 hours. Fisher observed a Japanese soldier approaching his primary Ember device with unusual caution. This wasn't an ordinary scout. The movement pattern suggested extensive training and experience. Fisher waited, controlling his breathing, trusting his pre-aimed position. When the target paused to observe the Ember, Fisher fired. Dawn identification revealed he'd killed Sergeant Takeshi Yamashita, the 6th Division's most experienced infiltration specialist, credited with personally killing over 30 American soldiers during night operations across the Solomon Islands. Yamashita's death sent shockwaves through Japanese command structures. His reputation had been legendary, a ghost who killed without being seen, then vanished into darkness. His elimination by an unseen American defender suggested enemy forces had developed equally sophisticated night capabilities. Japanese operational confidence began cracking. February 14th brought unexpected complications. Japanese forces, having suffered severe casualties the previous night, adjusted their tactics. They stopped approaching glowing lights directly, instead observing from distance and attempting to identify patterns. Fisher had anticipated this adaptation. He'd built randomization into his Ember devices, ensuring no 2 pulsed identically and positioning them to create confusion rather than obvious patterns. More importantly, he introduced a new variant, mobile Embers. Using volunteers willing to crawl forward with handheld Ember devices, Fisher created moving lights that suggested American patrols or shifting sentry positions. Japanese observers, watching these lights move erratically, couldn't determine if they represented real targets or continued deception. This uncertainty paralyzed their decision-making. Acting meant potential ambush, but not acting meant surrendering night intelligence gathering entirely.
The psychological warfare aspect intensified dramatically on February 15th. Japanese soldiers began exhibiting behaviors consistent with extreme stress and paranoia. Marines reported hearing enemy troops firing at nothing, wasting ammunition on shadows, bioluminescent fungi, fireflies, and even the reflective eyes of nocturnal animals. The Ember deception had triggered a cascade of mistrust. If lights couldn't be trusted, what could? Captured Japanese documents from this period revealed the mental toll. One diary entry, translated by intelligence officers, described the situation with visceral fear. "The Americans have learned demon magic. Lights appear that hunger for us. 3 men in my unit died investigating fire spirits. Officers forbid approaching any light, but how can we conduct reconnaissance blind? We hear shooting throughout the night, our own men firing at phantoms. Sleep is impossible. Every shadow might kill us." Fisher's personal kill count climbed to 34 by February 16th, but the strategic impact far exceeded individual casualties. Japanese night infiltration operations across the entire sector had effectively ceased. Enemy forces, unable to conduct nighttime intelligence gathering without catastrophic losses, withdrew to purely defensive postures after dark. This reversed the psychological dynamic that had terrorized American forces for months. The culmination came on February 17th. Intelligence reports suggested Japanese command had ordered a massive coordinated night assault, a desperate attempt to break Marine defenses before reinforcements arrived.
Enemy commanders apparently believed that overwhelming force across the entire perimeter would render Ember device ambushes ineffective through sheer numbers. Fisher prepared differently for this attack. Rather than maintaining static defensive positions, he organized mobile ambush teams equipped with portable Ember devices. As Japanese forces advanced under cover of darkness, these teams moved perpendicular to the attack axis, constantly repositioning Ember devices to create confusion about American defensive positions. Enemy troops, encountering moving lights that appeared, disappeared, and reappeared in unexpected locations, lost unit cohesion. Platoons separated, squads became disoriented, and the coordinated assault fragmented into disorganized groups stumbling through darkness toward lights that led nowhere. The result was catastrophic for Japanese forces. Marine defensive fire, guided by the knowledge that any movement toward Ember devices represented enemy troops, inflicted massive casualties. Fisher personally achieved 13 confirmed kills that night, bringing his 6-day total to 47. But across the entire perimeter, Ember-enabled ambushes accounted for an estimated 300 enemy casualties, while Marine losses totaled only 12, a reversal of the typical night combat casualty ratio. February 18th dawn revealed a battlefield that shocked even experienced Marines. Japanese dead lay scattered across the defensive perimeter, many positioned exactly where Ember devices had lured them. The assault had failed completely, shattered not by superior firepower, but by psychological manipulation and tactical deception that turned enemy aggression into vulnerability. The intelligence windfall was equally significant. Japanese soldiers killed while approaching Ember devices carried detailed notes about American positions, patrol routes, and defensive plans. Their deaths eliminated experienced scouts and intelligence gatherers whose knowledge took months to develop. Enemy operational planning capabilities suffered severe degradation that persisted for weeks afterward. If you've been captivated by this story of tactical innovation and psychological warfare, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to our channel. These deep investigations into forgotten military innovations require extensive research and verification. Your subscription helps us continue uncovering these remarkable stories of ingenuity under fire. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the next extraordinary tale of combat innovation that changed history.
The Ember technique's formal adoption came swiftly. By February 20th, Marine Corps headquarters issued operational directives incorporating Fisher's methods into standard defensive doctrine. The language was technical, but clear. All defensive positions will employ luminescent decoy devices to exploit enemy night infiltration tactics. Positioning, pulsing patterns, and defensive fire coordination will follow established protocols developed during recent operations on New Georgia. Fisher spent March through May 1944 traveling between Marine divisions, training thousands of infantrymen in Ember device construction and deployment. His teaching methodology emphasized understanding enemy psychology. The Japanese soldier is brave, skilled, and disciplined. We can't outbrave them, but we can outthink them. These Ember devices work because they exploit human nature: curiosity, aggression, confidence in training. Make the enemy see what they expect to see, then kill them when they act on those expectations. The technique evolved rapidly across the Pacific theater. Marines on Saipan developed waterproofed versions for beach defenses. Forces on Peleliu created elaborate multi-layered Ember patterns that simulated entire false defensive lines. By August 1944, every Marine division employed variants of Fisher's innovation, and Army units began adopting similar methods. Japanese forces attempted countermeasures. Training manuals captured on Tinian included specific instructions. Do not approach American luminescent displays under any circumstances. Assume all light sources are tactical deception designed to lure Imperial forces into ambush. Conduct nocturnal reconnaissance using sound and movement detection only. These countermeasures validated Fisher's achievement. When an enemy develops specific doctrine to counter your technique, you've fundamentally changed how they fight. The psychological impact extended beyond immediate casualties.
Japanese night operation effectiveness declined measurably across the Pacific theater following widespread Ember device deployment. Intelligence assessments estimated that enemy night reconnaissance capability decreased approximately 40% between February and August 1944, directly attributable to the psychological reluctance to investigate visual anomalies that might represent deception. The human cost behind the statistics was captured in a Japanese officer's diary recovered on Okinawa. Major Hiroaki Tanaka, battalion commander in the 32nd Army, wrote extensively about the psychological toll. Our soldiers fear the darkness now, a reversal we cannot accept. They report seeing enemy lights everywhere, some real, some imagined. 3 men shot themselves accidentally, firing at shadows they believed were American deception. 17 more died investigating lights that led to ambush. I ordered complete prohibition of night reconnaissance. We are blind after sunset. The Americans have weaponized our own training against us. Fisher's personal tally for his 6 nights of active Ember device operations totaled 89 confirmed kills, verified by observers and documented in official after-action reports.
This number represented individual kills he personally achieved, not the hundreds of enemy casualties his technique enabled across the entire division. Military historians later calculated that Ember device tactics Fisher pioneered contributed to approximately 2,000 Japanese casualties across the Pacific theater, while reducing American night combat deaths by an estimated 1,800 lives saved. The cost of innovation carried psychological weight Fisher struggled with for decades. In his only recorded interview, conducted in 1989 by a Marine Corps historian, he reflected, "People call me a hero. I don't feel like one. I killed 89 men in 6 nights. Each one was somebody's son, brother, maybe father. They died because I figured out how to make them curious, make them aggressive, make them come to me. That's not heroism, that's manipulation. Necessary, effective, but not heroic." When asked if he'd make the same choices again, Fisher paused for nearly 30 seconds before responding, "Yes, because the alternative was watching more of my Marines die. Jimmy Reeves died because we couldn't see in the dark. Those 89 Japanese soldiers died because I made the darkness work for us instead of them. If that saved even one Marine's life, it was worth carrying for the rest of mine." Fisher left active duty in October 1945, returning to Pennsylvania, but never to coal mining. He opened a small hardware store in Williamsport, married, raised 3 children, and avoided all publicity. When Marine Corps representatives contacted him about reunion events and historical documentation, he consistently declined. Only in 1989, after his wife passed away, did he agree to the single interview that preserved his first-hand account. He died in January 1995 at age 72. His obituary mentioned his Marine service, but not his innovations. Former students who'd learned his techniques decades earlier attended the funeral, many traveling across the country. They understood what civilian mourners couldn't, that Daniel Fisher had changed warfare through creativity born from desperation and refined through understanding enemy psychology at its most fundamental level. The Ember devices themselves disappeared shortly after the war. Military doctrine absorbed the principles, but discarded the physical implementations as more sophisticated night vision technology emerged. By the 1950s, infrared systems and starlight scopes provided technological solutions to night combat challenges. The improvised watch face paint and mechanical timers became historical curiosities. But the underlying concept endures. In modern military deception operations, contemporary doctrine regarding enemy expectation exploitation, false signature generation, and psychological uncertainty creation all trace intellectual lineage to innovations like Fisher's Ember technique. The specifics changed, technology evolved,
Enemies adapted, but the principle remained constant. Make the enemy see what they expect, then exploit their response. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Quantico includes Fisher's story in its historical curriculum, not as a sniper technique, but as an example of tactical creativity under constraint.
Instructors emphasize that his success stemmed not from superior marksmanship, but from superior thinking about the problem. Corporal Fisher didn't shoot better than his enemy, the lesson states. He thought differently about what shooting meant. That difference saved thousands of lives. In 2008, the National Museum of the Marine Corps unveiled a small exhibit dedicated to improvised Pacific theater innovations. Among the displayed items, 3 reconstructed Ember devices built according to Fisher's specifications, using authentic radium paint watch components and clock mechanisms from the 1940s. The placard reads, "These crude devices, assembled from broken watches and scrap metal, represent the innovative spirit that defined American forces in World War II. Corporal Daniel E. Fisher proved that success in combat often comes not from having superior weapons, but from using available tools in superior ways." The exhibit includes Fisher's own words from his 1989 interview displayed prominently. "The Japanese owned the night until we made them afraid of light. That's all it took. Make them fear what they'd been trained to trust." Simple idea, but simple ideas work when they change the rules. Those rules changed permanently. Japanese night fighting doctrine never fully recovered from the psychological damage inflicted by Ember device operations and similar deception tactics. By war's end, enemy forces approached darkness with caution rather than confidence, a reversal that American forces exploited strategically in the final island campaigns. The broader lesson transcends specific tactics or historical context. Fisher demonstrated that innovation under constraint produces results that abundant resources cannot replicate. He didn't have infrared technology, night vision equipment, or sophisticated surveillance systems. He had broken watches, mechanical ingenuity, and deep understanding of human psychology applied to a specific problem. That combination changed the Pacific Theater's nocturnal battlefield more effectively than any technological advantage. Thomas Michael Callahan turned soup cans into weapons through light reflection. Daniel Eugene Fisher weaponized watch paint through darkness manipulation. Both Marines proved the same essential truth. In warfare, the deadliest weapon is human creativity applied with courage to problems that conventional thinking cannot solve. The enemy had superior night fighting capabilities until Americans changed what night fighting meant. That's not just tactical innovation, that's operational genius, born from necessity and refined through sacrifice. The jungle nights on New Georgia are quiet now. The Ember devices vanished decades ago. The men who built them, deployed them, and died because of them are mostly gone. But the lesson remains, preserved in doctrine, taught in schools, and remembered by those who understand that sometimes the best way to win isn't fighting harder, it's making the enemy fight your fight instead of theirs. 89 men died in 6 nights because Daniel Fisher made them curious. Thousands lived because he made them afraid. That mathematics defined the Pacific Theater's night warfare transformation, written not with advanced technology, but with stolen watch paint, mechanical timers, and the courage to try something nobody had thought possible. The darkness belonged to Japan, until one Pennsylvania coal miner decided to illuminate it with ghosts. After that, the night belonged to everyone and no one, exactly the uncertainty that wins wars.